So one of the things that I spend an awful lot of time doing in my real job as an organizational psychologist is manager training. Manager training for managers at all levels in the organization, from mid-level managers all the way up to executives, has always been one of my highest priorities because I firmly believe that the linchpin of any culture in any organization depends on who your boss is and on how they treat you. And there is an absolute fine balance to be had between a manager adapting their management style and their management approach to the different needs that their employees have, and reminding the employees that there is still a hierarchy to follow. Listen, employees, whether they admit it or not, and most of them will not, they actually do like structure. They like structure that tells them if they're doing the right thing, if they're doing the wrong thing. They like being told yes, and yeah, they even like being told no. I used to coach this one mid-level manager in an organization, and she would tell me all the time, she's like, Carlin, I need my boss to tell me both guardrails. I need my boss to tell me what's going well and what I am not doing well so that I can improve the things that I am not doing well. And the best organizations strike this balance really, really well. They know that there is a human aspect to managing people in which you need to gain their buy-in for things that you want to do in the organization. It's not enough just to say, I pay you money to do a job. You have to get on that emotional level with your employees. They have to feel as though they are heard, considered, understood, and that you've explained your decision within the context of the complaints that they have. This comes out of a very famous management book called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, when he's talking about employee buy-in to different types of decisions. So I bring this up because I don't think that Spotify employees, or maybe Spotify's management team, has really gotten the memo in terms of how to manage a group of employees. Because, as has been covered on many other channels at this point, Spotify employees are basically mutinying over Joe Rogan. Listen, there is a difference between listening to the concerns of your employees and giving them ways to air those concerns and have conversations about those concerns, and kowtowing to what your employees want so that they feel emboldened and they feel as though they are actually in charge of the organization. Spotify, you've got to start telling your employees one little magic word that will help you through this problem. You've got to start telling them no. You have to start reminding them that there are actually people in charge of decision making, and oh, P.S., it's not them. Let's read about what is happening at Spotify. Spotify employees threaten to strike if Joe Rogan's podcasts aren't edited or removed. Now, listen, man, I was never a big fan of this thing he was doing with Spotify. The minute that I heard about this Spotify deal, I was kind of like, oh, Joe Rogan's getting ready to retire, isn't he? He wants that big freaking golden parachute of the $100 million Spotify deal because Spotify is absolutely going to screw up his podcast. Literally, no one is surprised by what's going on now. But you know what? Listen, man, it's his life. It's his podcast. He spent years and years and years building the thing up. He can do what he wants. I don't begrudge anyone a massive payday. What I do begrudge is this idea that freaking teenagers, okay, maybe they're not teenagers, but they're probably not much older than teenagers, can edit what this guy is doing, and that their organization is actually playing into this and like patting them on the head and making them feel as though this is allowed. A contingent of activist Spotify staffers are now considering a walkout or full-blown strike if their demands for direct editorial oversight of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast are not met. Late last week, we reported that Spotify employees were demanding direct editorial oversight over the recently acquired Joe Rogan Experience podcast. They would include the ability to directly edit or remove sections of upcoming interviews or block the uploading of episodes deemed problematic. The employees also have demanded the ability to add trigger warnings, corrections, references to fact-check articles on topics discussed by Rogan in the course of his multi-hour discussion. You know, I went to my local mall yesterday for the first time since the pandemic, and I rarely go to the mall anyway, but I kind of just wanted to see what the whole mall experience was like. And I gotta tell you, I was deeply impressed at how the stores in the mall don't really seem to care about making money anymore. They just don't really seem to care. Their staff members are rude. They're only allowing like a couple people in the store at one time. Even the stores are more than big enough. Like everyone's just standing around looking at you like you're about to do something wrong. It was an incredibly uncomfortable experience, more uncomfortable than my typical mall experience is. And I bring this up because Spotify is doing the exact same thing. It's like cutting off your nose to spite your face, man. Do you care about being a successful business? Or do you care about being woke? You have to choose one. You can't choose both. Some of the group's demands have already been met by Spotify management. And Spotify management, this is your first mistake. This is where we start going off the rails, is when you start to reason with employees when they are making unreasonable demands. Listen, I'm not saying you can't listen to them. I'm not saying you can't hear them out, but employees have to know where the boundaries are. Dude, I'm just going to put it, I'm brass tacks it for you for a second. This is like teaching children who the parent is and who the child is. You do not say yes to things when saying yes to those things is going to embolden them to ask for more and more and more and more and more. Like if you go to like a toy store, right? Say you go to like Target or something like that, you go to the toy aisle, kid wants a toy, kid has hissy fit because they're not getting the toy, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'll buy you the toy. Kid understands that the throwing of the hissy fit is going to lead to them getting a toy. So what do they do next? On the car ride home, they're like, I want ice cream. And like, you can't say no at that point because you've already given them positive reinforcement for bad behavior. This is exactly the same thing. If you are already meeting your employees' demands and kowtowing to them and saying, oh, you're right, woke millennial employees, we will not put those episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience on our platform because you have a disdain for them. You've just emboldened them to ask for more. Congratulations, Spotify. This is a problem of your own making, and it is only going to be solved when you start telling your employees no. According to preliminary plans shared with Digital Music News, the strike would principally involve New York-based Spotify employees and would be accompanied by protests outside Spotify's Manhattan office. Other aspects would involve media appearances and coordination with other activist groups. Let me get this straight. Spotify employees, who are paid money to do a job, are now saying, we are going to not do our job. We are going to go on strike from doing our job, although they probably still continue to expect to get paid. We are going to protest outside the office of the company that is paying us to do this job, and we are going to go on the media and lambaste the company that is paying us money because they're not doing what we want them to do. Why haven't these employees been fired? I'm sorry, Spotify, this is absolutely the best decision you can make in this scenario. If you want this to stop, you need to fire these employees because there are a boat ton of people that would want to work for Spotify, that would be very excited to work for Spotify. Many of them probably have skills that your current employees don't have, and they also have a sense of logic to know that you don't bite the hand that feeds you. These employees should be fired, no questions asked. Or if they're not fired, made very clear to them that if they keep this up, if they actually go on strike, the minute they go on strike and start protesting outside your offices and start calling you out in the media is the minute that they will get fired, no questions asked. Show them the door. This is the example you have to set, because if the management has already agreed to some of the demands of this group, they've already set the example. Now they've got to put a firm break on this thing and say, no, you're going across the line. For Spotify, the decision to offer some concessions may only have emboldened demands for wide-scale editorial oversight. You think? During the transition of Rogan's podcast episodes onto the Spotify platform, multiple past episodes were omitted. Those included interviews with Milo Yiannopoulos, Gavin McInnes, and Alex Jones. Additionally, Rogan issued a rare public apology and correction over his claim that left-wing anarchists had set fires in Oregon, blah, blah, blah. The apology is now believed to be the result of pressures from Spotify staffers. So now Joe Rogan's playing into this as well. Joe, dude, you gotta stop. You just gotta stop. I understand it's like your golden freaking nest egg, dude, but maybe it doesn't even matter to him. Honestly, I said from the very beginning, when he made this move to me, I initially thought Joe Rogan wants to retire. Joe Rogan's been doing this for a really long time. He maybe just is done. He maybe wants to do something else with his time. Who the heck knows? But it doesn't really seem as though he's interested in maintaining the integrity of his show. I could be wrong. That was just my first instinct. But those measures apparently don't go far enough. Rogan's claims during the Murray podcast is still part of the podcast recording despite demands that the offending section be removed or directly corrected within the audio itself. It now appears that Spotify is unwilling to directly edit or otherwise alter any existing episodes, with content alteration considered a bright line that shouldn't be crossed. Good. So make that the decision, make that very clear to your employees, and then say, this is the decision, this is the end of the discussion. We are not going to continue to waste money having meetings and discussing and trying to placate all you people. This is the decision. Get behind it or get off the train. Those are your options. You either support the decision or you go find a job somewhere else. And I promise you, the first time they fire someone for this nonsense, that is going to strike the fear of God into so many of these employees who have always had demands like this met at every single juncture in their life, from their parents, from their teachers, from whoever they were protesting at the time. They've always had these demands met, which is why they feel empowered and emboldened to do it now. They have to fire someone to make clear that no means no and stop behaving like children. Spotify's management has also refused to remove a more contentious recent episode involving Abigail Schreier. During the episode, Schreier sharply questions whether or not extremely young women should be undergoing gender transition operations. That drew accusations of transphobia from a contingent of LGBTQ plus Spotify employees who reportedly demanded changes in more than 10 separate meetings under Spotify management. 10 separate meetings. They have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on these people instead of just telling them no. Here is the decision. I don't even understand why you guys have a management structure. If you aren't going to use your management structure, then why do you even have it in the first place? You might as well train yourself into a holacracy like Zappos did. Lose what? What did Zappos lose? 20-25% of their staff in the process? Actually, it might have been most closer to 30. I could be misquoting that. It's been a while since I looked at that stat. But why are you even bothering with a management structure if your managers can't actually make decisions and say, this is what we're going to do? Ultimately, Spotify decided to keep the episode intact after judging that none of the platform's content guidelines were broken. What a concept. If a walkout or strike moves forward, it could be risky for the staffers involved. I would sure as heck hope so. Other corporations have witnessed walkouts or even full-blown strikes by activist employees for a range of grievances. These protests have often been met with changes through the employment landscape has changed dramatically in 2020. Spotify employees reportedly enjoy comfortable salaries in the $120,000 to $130,000 range with considerable perks and benefits. These are plum jobs in extremely uncertain economic times, making a strike a rather risky move. Exactly. Spotify just needs to fire one. You need to go find the head employee that is stirring up all this trouble, because it's probably going to be one or maybe 2 or 3 people that have gotten together in a little club and decided to rile everyone up. You've got to go find out who is stirring up employees, and you need to fire them to set an example to the other employees. It also appears that Spotify's management, including CEO Daniel Ek, has a limited tolerance for mutiny on deck. According to DMN, has learned that Spotify clearly shared its decision on the Schreier episode and has declined continued demands to edit or remove other episodes. The reason for X pushbacks is somewhat obvious. Joe Rogan's entire industry revolves around unfiltered discussion and opinion, and audiences could abandon the podcast if it becomes censored or controlled. Well, I would say that's a sure bet right there. I mean, listen, I bet you they're already abandoning it anyway because of this nonsense. Earlier this year, Spotify lured Rogan into an exclusive relationship with an estimated $100 million deal. So that's really my thoughts there. Spotify's got to fire some people. That's going to be the way that they start to clean this up. And then they've got to really lay the law down and say, we are making the decision. Here are the guidelines that we are going to use for this decision. And frankly, honestly, if they want this to actually be worth anything, they just gotta stop screwing around. Listen, man, people are only gonna continue to follow Joe Rogan's podcast if they feel as though it is authentic. That is the appeal of Joe Rogan in the first place. He is an authentic person that has interesting conversations with different perspectives with different people. If Spotify didn't want to host that kind of content, they shouldn't have struck a $100 million deal in the flipping first place. This is not hard. I don't know why these places don't understand. It's the authenticity of who he is that really resonates with people. If you take the authenticity away, you've just wasted a boat ton of money getting him on your platform for no good reason. All right, guys, that's all. Those are really my thoughts on this one. Listen, if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoy the content I'm making, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. I'm really want to hit 100,000 subscribers before Election Day. YouTube's been getting in my way lately. They've been really suppressing my content, making it only really available to subscribers. It's not this childproofing thing that goes on. At least I don't think it is, because I don't have any warnings on my account about that. But looking at my statistics, it is very clear that YouTube is not recommending my content to people who are not subscribers. So if you are not subscribed, I hope you'll consider subscribing today, sticking it to YouTube. I post pretty much daily content around different issues, around social justice, things going on in the news, that sort of stuff. All right, that's all I got for this time. I'll see you soon.